The morning mist clung to the Ethiopian highlands like a secret that refused to leave. From a distance, the coffee trees looked peaceful, their green leaves shining under the rising sun. But Liya Bekele knew peace was an illusion. Harvest season always carries tension. Every decision made during these weeks could determine whether her family plantation survived another year or slowly faded into memory. She stood on a small hill overlooking the fields, her boots damp from dew, watching workers move between rows of coffee trees with woven baskets tied to their backs. Their laughter rose softly into the air, mixing with birdsong, but Liya's eyes were serious. A foreign investor was arriving that morning, and she already felt the land resisting the idea. The Bekele plantation had existed long before paved roads reached the village. Her grandfather planted the first trees with his own hands, believing coffee was more than business. It was identity, dignity, and prayer. Liya carried that belief deeply within her. After her mother died and her father's health weakened, responsibility fell onto her shoulders. She learned quickly that love for the land was not enough anymore. Climate changes, fluctuating export prices, and international competition threatened small farms everywhere. Modernization was necessary, but she refused to turn her home into a factory. Down the slope, her father, Liya Bekele, sat beneath an acacia tree, observing the harvest. Each had curved his back, but not his spirit. Workers greeted him respectfully as they passed. He noticed Liya watching the road and called out gently, asking if she expected a guest. She walked toward him and explained that the investor from America would arrive soon. Abebe's eyes narrowed slightly. He said outsiders always arrived with promises, but often left with ownership. Liya answered that she would not allow anyone to control their land. Still, even as she spoke confidently, uncertainty pressed against her chest. A cloud of dust appeared on the distant road just before noon. A white vehicle climbed slowly toward the plantation, all familiar against the earthy colors of the highlands. Workers paused to stare. Children ran closer out of curiosity. Liya crossed her arms, preparing herself. When the car stopped, a tall man stepped out, adjusting his jacket as if unsure how to behave in the open countryside. Daniel Brooks looked around with quiet fascination. The mountain stretched endlessly before him, and for a moment he forgot the prepared speech in his mind.
Daniel had traveled across continents, studying agriculture, but nothing felt like this place. The air smelled alive, rich with soil and blossoms. He noticed workers smiling at one another, moving with rhythm rather than urgency. This was not the industrial farming environment he usually evaluated. When he saw Liya walking toward him, confidence in her stride, he immediately understood she was not someone easily persuaded. They greeted each other politely. Daniel introduced himself as an agricultural investor focused on sustainable growth. Liya nodded but kept her tone formal. She told him sustainability meant protecting people first, not simply increasing export numbers. Daniel smiled slightly, recognizing the warning hidden inside her words. He explained that his company wanted partnership, not control. Liya replied that many companies said the same thing before demanding changes that harmed communities. Their first tour of the plantation felt more like a debate than a business meeting. Liya explained traditional harvesting methods, showing how workers selected only ripe cherries by hand to preserve quality. Daniel asked questions about irrigation systems, processing efficiency, and global market access. His suggestions sounded logical, yet Liya sensed the invisible presence of spreadsheets and profit targets behind them. When he mentioned mechanized sorting equipment, she stopped working and told him machines could not replace experience passed through generations. Daniel listened carefully rather than arguing. He admitted he admired the care workers showed. He had visited farms where laborers worked silently under strict supervision. But here, people laughed, sang, and shared stories. Liya explained that coffee grew best where workers felt respected. She told him every family in the village depended on the plantation. Removing jobs would not simply change business operations, it would break lives. As the afternoon sun softened, Liya invited Daniel to witness a traditional coffee ceremony. They sat outside her family home while an elderly woman roasted fresh beans over charcoal. The aroma filled the air slowly, deeply comforting. Daniel watched every movement with curiosity.
The ceremony unfolded patiently, without hurry. Cups were poured one by one, conversation flowing naturally between pauses. For the first time since arriving, Daniel felt his usual professional urgency dissolve. Liya noticed his genuine interest and relaxed slightly. She explained that coffee ceremonies were about connection, not consumption. Business discussions waited until relationships formed. Daniel admitted that in his world, meetings often ended before people truly understood each other. Their conversation shifted away from numbers toward personal stories. He spoke about growing up in cities, always moving, never feeling rooted anywhere. Liya shared how she once considered leaving Ethiopia to study abroad, but returned after realizing the land was part of her identity. Evening light turned the hills golden as they walked again through the fields. Daniel began seeing the plantation differently. It was not inefficient, it was intentional. Every method served both quality and community. He found himself admiring Liya's leadership, how workers listened to her with trust rather than fear. She noticed his respectful silence and wondered whether she had misjudged him.
Over the next few days, Daniel stayed at a nearby guest house while continuing evaluations. He rose early to join harvest teams, learning to pick cherries himself. Workers laughed at his clumsy attempts and he laughed with them. Slowly, suspicion softened. Liya observed from a distance, surprised by his willingness to learn rather than command. She caught herself smiling once when he proudly showed her a basket of carefully selected cherries. Their conversations became easier. They discussed soil health, organic fertilizers, and ways technology could support farmers without replacing them. Daniel proposed building a small processing center owned jointly by local families. Liya considered the idea seriously. For the first time, modernization sounded like collaboration instead of invasion. One evening, rain fell suddenly over the mountains. Liya and Daniel took shelter inside a storage barn filled with drying coffee beans. Thunder echoed softly while droplets tapped against the roof. The closeness felt unexpected. Daniel admitted he had never worked on a project that felt personally meaningful before. Liya confessed she was tired of fighting alone to protect her father's legacy. Their eyes met longer than necessary, and silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken emotion. When the rain stopped, they stepped outside into cool air scented with wet earth. Neither mentioned the moment, yet something had shifted. Partnership was becoming trust, and trust was quietly turning into something deeper. That night, Daniel returned to his room and opened his laptop to send his first official report. He wrote about exceptional coffee quality, strong community structure, and potential for ethical growth. He emphasized gradual improvement rather than rapid industrial expansion. After pressing send, he felt satisfied, believing he had found a rare balance between business success and human values. The following morning, Liya walked through the plantation feeling hopeful for the first time in months. Workers discussed new possibilities, and even Abebe admitted the investor seemed respectful. He warned Liya, however, that intentions could change when money became involved. She defended Daniel instinctively, surprising herself. Perhaps she wanted to believe partnership could exist without exploitation. Later that afternoon, Daniel's phone vibrated repeatedly. He stepped away from the field to answer a call from Miriam Collins, his company's senior executive. Her voice carried sharp efficiency. She congratulated him on securing access to high-quality land, but quickly shifted tone. Headquarters expected rapid scalability. Investors wanted measurable growth within months, not years. She spoke about mechanization, expanded acreage, and workforce reduction strategies. Daniel hesitated, explaining that the plantation depended on traditional methods and community labor. Miriam responded that sentimentality could not interfere with profitability. She instructed him to prepare a restructuring proposal immediately. The call ended before he could argue further. Unease settled heavily in his chest. He looked across the hills where workers continued harvesting under warm sunlight, unaware of conversations happening far away in glass offices. Children chased each other near the trees. A baby watched quietly from his chair. Liya laughed with a group of women sorting cherries, her confidence rooted in the belief that partnership meant protection. Daniel returned to his room that evening feeling conflicted. An email notification appeared from headquarters, marked confidential. He opened it slowly. Attached documents outlined a detailed plan for large-scale industrialization, automated processing plants, land acquisition clauses, and projected layoffs disguised as efficiency improvements. At the bottom of the message, Miriam wrote a short instruction: secure local approval quickly before resistance forms. Daniel stared at the screen, realization dawning painfully. The partnership Liya believed in might already be under threat. Outside his window, the distant sound of workers singing drifted through the night, unaware that decisions made thousands of miles away could soon change everything. He closed the laptop, but sleep refused to come. For the first time in his career, success felt dangerously close to betrayal, and Daniel understood that whatever choice he made next would not only shape the future of the plantation, but also determine who he truly was. And as dawn approached the Ethiopian highlands once again, Daniel knew one truth with chilling certainty. The real negotiation had not yet begun, and Liya Bekele had no idea what was coming.
The coffee blossoms arrived quietly, almost overnight. One morning the hills were green, and by the next they were covered in delicate white flowers that stretched across the mountains like falling snow. The air smelled sweet and alive, promising a strong harvest months ahead. For Liya Bekele, the blooming season had always symbolized hope. Yet this year, hope walked beside uncertainty, though she did not yet know why. Daniel Brooks stood at the edge of the plantation, watching workers admire the blossoms. He should have felt proud. His early recommendations were working. Soil improvements had strengthened the trees, and the cooperative payment system he suggested allowed workers to earn slightly more without increasing pressure. The farm was thriving naturally, exactly as he believed development should happen. Still, the confidential documents from his company lingered heavily in his mind like a storm waiting behind clear skies. Liya approached him, carrying 2 small cups of freshly brewed coffee. She handed one to him with a smile that felt warmer than before. Over the past weeks, their relationship had changed without announcement. Conversations lasted longer. Silences felt comfortable rather than tense. She now asked his opinion openly, and he found himself seeking hers even when decisions technically belonged to him. She told him the blossoms reminded her of childhood mornings when her mother walked through the fields singing prayers for abundance. Daniel listened carefully, realizing that coffee here was a memory as much as agriculture. He admitted he had never stayed anywhere long enough for a place to carry personal meaning. Liya laughed gently and told him the land chooses people slowly. Daniel wondered if the land was beginning to choose him.
Their partnership deepened through daily work. Together, they experimented with improved drying techniques that preserved traditional methods while reducing waste. Workers gathered around them, curious and engaged. Daniel avoided presenting himself as a superior expert. Instead, he learned local techniques and adapted them with small innovations. This approach earned quiet respect from the community. Liya Bekele watched closely from the shade as trust grew between the foreign investor and his daughter. One afternoon, he invited Daniel to sit with him. The old man spoke slowly, saying that coffee farming was like raising a child. Forcing growth too quickly damaged the roots. Daniel assured him he understood. Yet as he spoke, guilt pricked at him. He was not certain how long he could protect the farm from corporate expectations. Evenings became their favorite time. After long work days, Liya and Daniel often walked through the blooming fields while the sun dipped behind distant mountains. They talked about dreams rather than contracts. Liya confessed she wanted to build a training school for young farmers so traditions would survive future generations. Daniel shared his hidden frustration with corporate agriculture, admitting he sometimes felt like a salesman rather than a builder. During one walk, wind carried petals through the air around them. Liya stopped to watch the blossoms fall, her face softened by fading light. Daniel felt words rising before caution could stop him.
He told her he admired her courage, not just as a farmer, but as a leader willing to fight for people. Liya looked at him carefully, sensing sincerity rather than flattery. For a moment, neither moved. Then she said quietly that she trusted him. The confession changed everything. A few days later, the village celebrated the blooming season with music and dancing. Lanterns glowed against the darkening sky while drums echoed across the hills. Workers invited Daniel to join the celebration, teasing him until he attempted traditional dance steps. Laughter surrounded him, and Liya watched with amusement. Seeing him embraced by her community stirred something unexpected inside her, relief mixed with affection. Later that night, away from the crowd, they stood near the coffee trees, glowing under moonlight. Daniel thanked her for allowing him into her world. Liya admitted she had been afraid he would eventually treat the farm as just another investment. Daniel hesitated, feeling the weight of secrets pressing against his chest. Instead of speaking, he reached for her hand. She did not pull away. Their first kiss came softly, almost uncertain, like the opening of a flower on show of the season. It was not dramatic or hurried. It felt natural, inevitable. When they stepped apart, both smiled awkwardly, surprised by how easily business partnership had turned into intimacy. For several days afterward, everything seemed brighter. Work flowed smoothly. Plans for a small cooperative processing center gained support among workers. Daniel delayed sending restructuring proposals to headquarters, hoping positive results would convince Miriam Collins to accept gradual development instead of industrial expansion.
But hope rarely goes unchallenged. Miriam announced her visit without asking permission. The news reached Daniel through a short message. Arrival scheduled within 48 hours. Prepare a presentation. Expect an evaluation team. Anxiety tightened his chest. Miriam did not travel unless decisive action was required. He considered warning Liya but feared creating unnecessary alarm before understanding Miriam's intentions. Instead, he told her company representatives were coming to review progress. Liya welcomed the idea confidently, believing successful results would secure long-term partnership. When Miriam Collins arrived, her presence immediately altered the atmosphere. She stepped out of the vehicle dressed sharply, her eyes scanning the plantation, not with admiration, but calculation. She greeted Liya politely, yet formally, already assessing infrastructure limitations, labor density, and expansion potential. During the tour, Miriam asked precise questions about output volume, export capacity, and workforce efficiency. She rarely addressed workers directly. Instead, she spoke to Daniel using corporate language that sounded foreign against the rhythm of the highlands. Liya sensed tension but remained composed, explaining how quality-focused production ensured premium market pricing.
Miriam listened, but remained unconvinced. She pointed toward hills beyond the current plantation, suggesting large-scale expansion using mechanized harvesting. She spoke about global demand, investor confidence, and competitive positioning. Her words felt cold against the warm community surrounding them. At lunch, Miriam presented charts showing projected profits if automation replaced much of the manual labor. Liya's smile faded as she realized the implication. She explained firmly that hundreds of families depended on those jobs. Miriam responded that modernization inevitably required difficult transitions. Daniel remained unusually quiet, torn between defending Liya openly and maintaining professional diplomacy. Miriam noticed his hesitation and later pulled him aside privately. She reminded him that his role was to secure profitability, not emotional attachment. She warned that investors expected aggressive growth and hinted that his career advancement depended on delivering results. That evening, Liya confronted Daniel gently, asking whether the company truly respected their partnership. Daniel assured her he supported her vision, though uncertainty crept into his voice. She searched his expression, sensing something hidden, but choosing trust over suspicion. The following morning, Miriam requested access to legal documents related to land ownership. Liya provided copies confidently, believing transparency strengthened partnership. Daniel watched uneasily as Miriam reviewed every detail with intense focus.
Later, while preparing reports inside the temporary office, Daniel noticed an email notification appearing on Miriam's open tablet. He did not intend to read it, but a familiar project title caught his eye. The message outlined acquisition strategy timelines and referenced confidential negotiations already underway. His stomach tightened. After Miriam left the room, Daniel hesitated before opening the shared company file on his laptop. He searched quickly, heart pounding. Document after document confirmed his fear. Headquarters planned to acquire controlling ownership of the Bekele plantation through contractual clauses buried within partnership agreements. Once control transferred, industrial expansion would proceed regardless of local consent. Daniel leaned back in shock. The partnership had never been equal. It was a pathway to take over. Outside, Liya walked through the fields proudly explaining future training programs to workers, unaware of the betrayal forming quietly around her. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility crashing over him. If he stayed silent, he would secure promotion and corporate success. If he spoke, he might destroy his career and possibly the fragile trust growing between him and Liya.
That night, the plantation felt unusually quiet. Miriam prepared to depart early the next morning, satisfied with progress.
Liya joined Daniel near the edge of the blooming fields, sensing his distance. She asked what troubled him. He almost confessed everything. The words rose to his lips, but stopped. Fear held them back. Instead, he told her he was thinking about the future. Liya smiled and said she believed their partnership would protect the farm for generations. Her confidence pierced him deeper than accusation would have. After she left, Daniel returned to his room and reopened the acquisition documents. One sentence stood out clearly. Finalize ownership transfer before local resistance develops. His hands trembled slightly. He realized the company did not merely want to modernize the plantation. They intended to take it. And as the blossoms drifted silently outside his window, Daniel understood with growing dread that the woman he was beginning to love had already been placed at the center of a deal she never agreed to. And soon, she would learn the truth.
The harvest season arrived heavier than expected. The white blossoms had disappeared, replaced by deep red coffee cherries hanging thick on every branch. Workers moved through the fields from sunrise until evening, their baskets filling quickly. Songs echoed across the hills again, but beneath the familiar rhythm, tension quietly lived inside Daniel Brooks. He walked among the workers, greeting them as usual, yet everything felt different now that he knew the truth. Every smiling face reminded him what could be lost. Every laugh sounded fragile. The acquisition document stayed hidden in his bag, pressing against him like a secret he could no longer carry alone. Liya Bekele noticed his change immediately. Daniel no longer lingered during conversations. His smile arrived late and disappeared quickly. One afternoon, she stopped him near the washing station and asked directly if something was wrong. Daniel hesitated, searching for safe words, but none existed. He told her that work pressure from his company had increased. Liya nodded slowly, though doubt flickered in her eyes. She told him the harvest season demanded honesty more than politeness. Coffee, she said, revealed its quality only after pressure. Daniel felt the meaning behind her words and knew he was running out of time. Meanwhile, Miriam Collins continued sending instructions from abroad. Emails arrived daily, demanding progress toward restructuring. She requested legal confirmations, workforce evaluations, and timelines for mechanization. Each message felt colder than the last. Daniel delayed responses, hoping to find another solution, but corporate patience was thinning. Liya Bekele watched everything silently. One evening, he invited Daniel to sit beside him again beneath the acacia tree. The old man spoke about storms that come without warning. He said a farmer must decide whether to protect crops or protect soil, because sometimes saving one destroys the other. Daniel listened, realizing Liya somehow sensed the conflict without knowing details. That night,
Daniel made his decision. He could not allow the takeover to happen quietly. The following morning, he asked Liya to walk with him beyond the plantation, where the hills opened toward distant valleys. The air felt tense before either spoke. Daniel's voice came slowly as he explained his company's true plan, the acquisition clauses, the mechanization strategy, and the intention to control production regardless of local agreement. For several seconds, Liya said nothing. Then disbelief turned into anger. She stepped away from him as if distance could erase what she had heard. Her voice shook as she asked whether he had known from the beginning. Daniel admitted he discovered the plan recently, but struggled to tell her immediately. The confession hurt more than the betrayal itself. To Liya, silence felt like participation.
She accused him of gaining her trust while working against her family. Daniel tried explaining that he was fighting internally to stop the process, but pain had already closed her ears. Years of defending her land against exploitation rose within her. She told him outsiders always arrive speaking about partnership before taking control. Daniel reached toward her, but she stepped back firmly. Tears filled her eyes, though her voice remained strong. She said the plantation was not a business experiment, it was people's lives. Then she walked away, leaving Daniel alone among the hills. Word spread quickly through the village after Liya shared the truth with community leaders. Fear replaced celebration. Workers worried about losing jobs. Families gathered late into the night discussing uncertain futures. Trust fractured overnight. Daniel became an outsider again. Some workers avoided eye contact. Others greeted him politely but cautiously. He accepted their distance, knowing he deserved it. Yet, instead of leaving, he began gathering evidence of internal communications, financial projections, and legal details revealing the company's deceptive strategy. If he exposed the truth publicly, investors might withdraw support from the takeover. Miriam sensed resistance immediately. She called Daniel angrily, accusing him of delaying progress. She reminded him of contracts he signed and opportunities he risked losing. Daniel answered calmly for the first time, telling her the company's plan violated ethical partnership principles. Miriam warned that emotional involvement clouded his judgment and threatened termination if he continued interfering. The confrontation marked a turning point. Daniel realized his career within the company was already ending. Days later, tragedy struck when Liya Bekele collapsed during harvest inspections. Workers rushed him to the village clinic while Liya stayed beside him, fear overwhelming her strength. The old man survived but remained weak. Lying in bed, he told Liya the land had survived many struggles because people chose courage over fear. He also told her something unexpected. He believed Daniel cared for the plantation genuinely. Liya resisted the idea at first, still wounded by betrayal. But watching Daniel from a distance, helping workers repair equipment, organizing shipments, refusing to abandon the farm despite rejection, slowly complicated her anger. She saw a man sacrificing comfort rather than protecting reputation. One evening, Daniel requested a final meeting with her. They stood again among the coffee trees, now heavy with ripe fruit ready for harvest. He handed her printed documents exposing the acquisition plan and explained he intended to submit them to independent agricultural regulators and ethical trade organizations. Doing so would likely end his career, but could protect the plantation legally. Liya listened quietly. She asked why he would risk everything. Daniel answered honestly that success meant nothing if achieved through harm. He admitted he had come to Ethiopia searching for professional achievement, but found something far more important: belonging, purpose, and love. The word hung in the air between them.
Liya's heart softened, though pain remained. She realized trust was not broken by mistakes alone, but by refusal to make them right. Daniel was choosing to stand with her now, even at personal cost. Together, they prepared for confrontation. When Miriam returned unexpectedly with legal representatives, she expected compliance. Instead, she found community leaders gathered alongside Liya and Daniel. Evidence of the company's hidden acquisition strategy was presented openly. Workers spoke about their dependence on the plantation. Cooperative partners voiced support for ethical development rather than corporate takeover. Miriam argued aggressively, insisting contracts allowed full control.
Daniel countered by revealing misleading disclosures that could trigger legal investigation. Facing public scrutiny and potential reputational damage, Miriam realized forcing acquisition could backfire internationally. After hours of tense negotiation, the company withdrew immediate takeover plans, agreeing instead to maintain a minority investment under strict ethical conditions. The plantation would remain under Bekele family leadership while modernization continued cooperatively. Victory did not feel loud or dramatic. It arrived quietly, like rain returning after a drought. Weeks later, the harvest season concluded successfully. Workers celebrated stronger wages and renewed security. Plans began for Liya's farmer training school, supported by ethical investors Daniel connected through independent networks. Though no longer employed by his former company, Daniel stayed in the highlands, helping develop sustainable trade partnerships.
One evening, as the sun dipped behind golden mountains, Liya joined him near the hill where they first argued months earlier. The fields below glowed with life. She told him forgiveness was not instant, but grown slowly, like coffee itself. Daniel nodded, understanding patience was part of love. She reached for his hand this time. Liya admitted she had feared loving someone who might leave. Daniel answered that he had finally found somewhere worth staying. Their kiss felt different from the first, not uncertain, but earned through struggle, honesty, and shared purpose. The plantation entered a new chapter, blending tradition with thoughtful innovation. Machines supported workers rather than replacing them. Young farmers trained under Liya's guidance. Coffee from the Bekele highlands gained recognition not only for flavor but for ethical production that respected culture and community. As another blooming season approached, white flowers began appearing again across the hills. Daniel watched them beside Liya, understanding that growth did not require abandoning roots. Progress and tradition could exist together when guided by conscience. And in the quiet rhythm of the Ethiopian highlands, a lasting lesson took root. True success is not measured by how much we gain, but by how many lives we protect while growing. Love, like coffee, blooms strongest where patience, integrity, and respect for people come before profit.